There are many things that I love about art, but perhaps one of the most fun is that an artist can do the unexpected. They can take their subject matter and present it in a way that might surprise us or intrigue us or draw us in some unusual way. And that's exactly what we're going to do in today's Tangle. We're going to turn things on their head with the traditional Zentangle floral tile. Instead of those graceful lines and the soft petals, we're going to exchange those things for hard edges, industrial and metal elements that will be different, but I hope very fun. So I hope you'll join with me today as we draw together in what I'm calling the mechanical botanical. To get our tiles ready for the drawing, we're going to do just a few steps of preparation. So we'll start with the traditional corner dots, about a ½ inch or so, maybe a little longer, in from each corner, and then draw a simple line that will be a guide for us in constructing our tangles. Once we have that border placed, we want to take a look at the top and bottom borders. And what I want to do is divide that in half by making a little mark, just visually in half, doesn't have to be precise, and then divide those sections in half again, and then divide those one more time, each piece in half. Just little marks that we'll use as a guide, and we'll do the same thing along the bottom. The halfway point, then half again, and so on. Now we can take up our pens and begin actually drawing our tangles. We're going to start in the corner. Each corner we're going to make an orb and then an orb inside of that. So we want to size it appropriately, and let's see how we're going to do that. So I'm going to use this corner as kind of a guide for me, and that's where one edge of my orb will be. Just like that. And we'll do the same in this other corner. And we'll do that in all four corners. I'll zoom out here just so you can see the rough placement of those. Just like that. Now what I want to also do is I'm going to create another little orb inside to remain white, and then I'm going to ink in the rest of that orb. Right along this line, using these marks, we want to connect these two orbs with little seed or rice-shaped pieces. Or maybe you can think of it like a little teeny tiny hot dog. We just want to connect the ends of each one to the other. And just work our way across, and we're making each one the length of those little marks, those little tick marks that we made to begin with. And they don't have to be perfectly the same, but we wanted them to be somewhat consistent. We're just drawing these little marks all the way across until we get to the other side. Then on these where they intersect, we want to create about a halfway down to about halfway down, a little shape just like that on each side. And I'll zoom in. You can see my errors all that better that way. And then we also want to do a little thing like this. Now this might look at first like a chain, but it's not, I don't believe, intended to be a chain, but it may have that look. Now we want to skip one of those intersections, go to the next one. We're going to repeat that same process. So skip one. And again, in Zentangle, in this type of drawing, we're not looking for laser computerized accuracy. So if your shapes are a little wonky and slightly different than one another, that's completely fine. That gives your drawing some character. But now we want to do this same pattern down here on the other side. This is a very simple tangle called Flec, and I'll put a link there in the information about the artist that created the step out in the description box. So the next tangle we're going to create is called Alla, A-L-L-A. And it is going to be a flowering type tangle, but again with this mechanical slant to it. So we're going to start it. It's going to be about this size. So we're going to start it right about here on our tile, roughly in the center or just above and over to the right hand side. And we start, as many things do in Zentangle, with an orb. I'm making it a pretty good size, but you don't want to make it huge, but we want to be able to make it big enough where we're going to be able to see this. And then the next step for this is we draw some lines that emanate outward from that orb, but do not touch the center. I'll zoom in so you can see this better. And then we'll do one in all four quadrants, about the same length, as best as you can eyeball it, just like this. And then we're going to divide those in half and do the same thing. Again, about the same length. This is just creating a little sunshine. You've probably drawn a million of these if you're a doodler. But we're going to use it to create a very symmetrical piece here. And then we're going to draw a line again in between all of these. And this is the base version of this tangle. We're going to do some modifications on these as we create them to give them more of a unique mechanical look. But we've got our basic pattern here now, so now we pick any two lines and draw a line that connects the bottoms. Then you move to the right in this sense, or clockwise, and we'll connect the top. Then the bottom. Then the top. Bottom. Top, and so on. And we'll continue this all the way around this initial pattern that we've created. And if your lines aren't perfectly symmetrical, again, don't worry about it. It will give the drawing some character. And we're going to add a couple modifications. We're going to draw little triangles that come up from those edges. And then we'll draw a line that comes down about to where that little internal wheel is and stops. You don't want to connect it to anything. Like that. And now we also want to make a centerpiece here that will be a circle. And some spokes coming out. I'm going to do 4 of them here. Now we're going to create the stem for this. So what we want to do is come out at a little bit of an angle. And then we're going to draw a line and another line and create a little triangle there. And we'll create another little triangle that gives us an angle. So I'm going to come out of that angle, come over here, and we'll do the same thing. And then shooting this down to our line. So we get a funny little shape, like some pipes and metal that are created to make that shape. Now, we need to draw another one of these little guys, but we're going to make it a little bit smaller and in the background. So we'll start our orb right about here. And we'll do those next lines just like we started the other one. And if you go off behind, that's fine. And then we'll do halfway between, but we're going to stop there. So we're not going to create that additional set of lines, but we're going to complete this the same way. So we'll connect the bottom and the top. Again, if it draws behind, that's okay. And we've got that. Now what we want to do is right along, let's choose the right-handed edge. And we're going to do like that. Just creating two little, kind of like little aura lines on the inside of these little blades. But they get a little smaller each time. Just like that. And then we'll do the same or similar in the center here. With some spokes. When we create the stem for this plant, we're going to do it a little bit differently, just to add some variety. So I'm going to bring this out and make it a little bit curvy there. Give it a little bit of thickness though, so we have something to work with. And then we're going to make little curved shapes all along that inside. And then just as though it kind of has its own mind of its own, this stem is also going to come out up top here. And we're going to curve these the opposite way. Then I'm going to create some little lines, just kind of like little wires coming out, and I'll put a couple little darker spots here and there, almost like there's something going on, maybe little electrodes or wire bits just sitting there at the end. And that's where we'll stop that. We're going to move on now to our next tangle, which, get this name, it's a tricky one, Fescurus Verae. And I'll spell that in the description box, but this is a tangulation or a variation of fescue, which is a really simple, easy tangle. We're going to modify it a little bit. And we're going to start it way over here, and we're going to curve our line up above here. So we want to take this right up to about there, and then we want to make our little end just like in the fescue. So now if you were drawing the tangle fescue, that'd be it. We'd be done. But in this case, we're going to continue. We're going to make a small aurad line with a little gap that follows this original line and just connects up the top there. So I've just gone and made a loop around it like that. Now we're going to do some more on the outside, but we're going to use some hard edges. So give yourself a little space. Just watch how I'm doing this here. And I am going to draw behind. And I'm going to come up through there. And let's bring this over. Just like that. Now we have that basic shape on the inside of where these pieces are. We want to make some small orbs. Give yourself a little space and some space between them, but make them large enough where they can be seen and maybe have a center to them. But we're creating some bolts or rivets or some kind of mechanical component here. In our weird little botanical world. And now everywhere we see a point or a peak, we want to draw a line that comes down. And it doesn't have to go all the way. In fact, don't connect it to anything. Just make it head toward that stem shape, but not actually to touch it. And if your bolts are underneath one of those and your line's going to hit the bolt, that's all right. You can just stop just before it like that. And if there's something going on behind things that you can't see, that's okay. Just do the best you can. And just create some shape to that. Now we're going to create another one of these curving in this direction. And we're going to bring it up behind this one and might even tuck in behind here at some point. So let's start it about in the center of our tile. And we'll bring this up. It's going to go right through. I'm going to make the end of it right there. Okay. And now let's do that first aura. Okay, and now we get to do our more extravagant, what I call the dragon fin, even though it's not a dragon, obviously. We just want to have that coming in and out behind this other piece, so draw where you need to. And that one might just disappear in the background there. Just like that. Gets a little confusing sometimes, but just do the best you can and create that over and under. Layering is such a powerful way in art to create depth in the sense or the illusion that it's not just a flat piece, and then that'll especially come to life once we add our shading. But let's add those rivets to this one as well. And some of those might peek in behind there, so you're not going to be able to see them. But if it's more convenient to just place them where you can, that's certainly fine. There's no law in the world of mechanical plants that says where those rivets have to go. And then we're just adding those lines coming down from the peaks. Just like that. Now we want to add an additional plant just like this, one of these little Alla flowers. We're going to put him right here. We're going to fill this area up completely or nearly completely. So we're going to put him, he's going to be kind of smaller here again. We've basically got our primary pattern already good to go. So what we want to do now is add just a few details. So I'm going to get a slightly smaller pen, a smaller nib on it, and I'm going to add some details here. First thing I want to do is on these chain links, I'm going to add some little flick marks in those center pieces where they connect, just to give the slightest hint of a shadow or a curvature or something like that. I'll zoom in again here so you can see. I'm just adding some very simple little hatch marks where those two pieces come together. Just like that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So we'll continue to add some details here, and on this plant, let's create some hatching on these corner triangle pieces. Keep your hatches kind of close together just so it creates a darkness or a shadow, the appearance of a shadow. Here, I'll zoom in again so you can see that a little better. I'm just starting in one of the corners and sort of going diagonally across that triangle. Now let's add just a few additional details. I want to make little, just very subtle little marks around the circles of these plants, and on these we'll do it right where the openings are, where those petals kind of come together, and I'll do that on this one as well. When we add our shading, this, believe it or not, will help accentuate and allow us to create indentations, if you will, that are kind of built into that plant. Let's ink in these little inner pieces on each of our floral plants, just to give a little more darkness and contrast to our drawing, because right now we've got a lot of lines and we want to visually make this a little bit more interesting, just so that we're not stuck with the line-a-palooza here with endless lines. Sometimes that's unavoidable in a drawing, but if we can add little bits of darkness and color here and there, that's going to be very good for our contrast. One thing too is if you plan on coloring your art, then the colors differences, of course, will help bring some darkness into the drawing as well, so it's not always a problem that way. In fact, let's do one additional thing on these little chain pieces. Let's ink in the littlest part of each set of links we created. Again, it's not really a chain, but it has that appearance. This will just further give us a little bit more contrast and set that set of lines apart from all those lines that are behind it. It'll just help make that a little easier to distinguish. Now, I know that shading can sometimes be tedious, and it's funny, as I teach classes in person and have done the Zentangle for many years, or even teaching other kinds of drawing, some people just say, boy, I hate the shading. It's so tedious. And it can be. But for others, it's their favorite part, because that's where your drawing really starts to come to life, because we're able to distinguish tones and qualities and shadows and light and depth and dimension, and it just really makes it sing, in my opinion. So taking your time with the shading, it may seem tedious, but I believe it's really worth it. So take a look at this as it sits, and then I'll snap another shot when we're all done, and we'll compare it side by side and show you what a difference just the shading can make. So the first thing we want to do is some little details. So I'm going to add shading, just a little bit of graphite into these very areas where we added our ink. So we've added a little bit of shading there. Now let's move to some of more intricate details. So on these edges of our first plant, I want to add some graphite here at the ends. I'm throwing just a few squiggles in there that I can blend with my tortillon. And then I'm going to add some to the bottom edge, or the leftmost edge. Here I'll add it kind of there where the graphite. But now notice I changed. See, here it's this way. I'm assuming kind of the light is sort of coming from the top down. Again, we don't often do that with Zentangle, and it's not required, so you can just pick your spot, so to speak. But I want to do it in a way that might emulate a little bit of real light sourcing, because it just makes it more fun sometimes. And then I'm adding just a little bit around these edges where we made our little marks. And I try to teach you some basic tips and tricks about light sourcing, but I don't want you to get bogged down in it with Zentangle. That's not really what Zentangle's all about. But it's just a fun way for me to show you some of these things. And then if we do other drawings in the future, which I do many other types of art, so it's very likely that I'll be showing you some, that it allows us to understand or have that beginning for our shading practices. And I'm trying to leave a little bit of white there, just because that'll be an automatic built-in highlight, so to speak, and it gives those shapes a little bit of dimension. Now we get to the fun pieces that have more interesting shapes that we can shape. So one thing we want to do, of course, we're going to put a little bit of a shadow along this long inside curve. And when we blend that, it'll give a roundness of our shape there, like it's going into that piece. So I'm just adding a very light little bit of graphite along this edge. Not bearing down hard at all with the pencil, just very lightly. And then I'm going to go across here where there would be a shadow. And before we blend that, I guess, let me zoom back out, hard for you to see here. We're going to add some shadow to these edges, but only the edge where again, if we're assuming the light is kind of coming in, like if this is the light, it's shining in this way, kind of down and at a slight angle. So that means we're going to have more of a shadow on these left edges than we would anywhere else, because that light's going to hit. And then this, if this is beveled so it's lower here and it comes up to an edge, then that's where that shadow's getting created. And when we blend that out, it's going to help accentuate that. I just thought of one other thing I wanted to have you do. Let's take our pen, and I want to have you add some darkness, a bolder line to the underneath of these rivets. Give you a close-up again. And the reason we'll do that is it's going to automatically make the eye think that those rivets are lifted up. They're not quite flush with the surface, and so there's a small shadow being cast where they are. And that also helps bring out just a tiny bit more contrast in our drawing with a little bit of additional darkness. And so it just automatically creates the impression of a small shadow being cast. And so I'm going to add that to all my rivets. So now we can go back to our pencil and let's blend this out. So we'll just very gently rub along this edge. You want it to kind of remain darkest at the line so it gets lighter as it moves away from there. And that's what's going to create this subtle sense of shape and curve to this tangle. So we're just going to fade this out very gently, just like this. Now let's do that back one as well. Now we've got some overlaps here too, so let's add some darkness in there. We'll make that a little darker just because it's going to be a cast shadow, so we want to really give that impression properly. And along these edges as well. With all the shading completed, we now have our finished mechanical botanical. Now I'll try with the editing software to see if I can superimpose a before and after right on the screen and let you see just what a difference shading alone can make, let alone if you add some color. But I also wanted to show you that, just for fun, I did a few different variations of this drawing, very, very similar, while I was trying to come up with what I wanted to show you. And I tried different types of shading. This one even had some different tangles in it. But we end up with, I tried different things in the background there and different subtle, different layouts. But I also did a couple colorized versions, and I thought you might enjoy seeing those. It just gives you an example of what can be done. This one I used colored pencil. This one I used alcohol markers with a little gel pen at the end. And I have a slightly different versions of plant in there as well. But that just gives you an example of what can be done and how we can arrange things and have fun with it. But here is our final drawing we did together today. And I just want to say, as always, thank you so very much for joining me here in the Tangles and Tunes channel. I hope you enjoyed this video and following along, and I look forward to seeing everyone again real soon back here in the Tangles and Tunes channel. Until then, take care. Bye-bye now.